So it was debated. Why is legal, is kind of ethic, and over the pretty much 200, 300 years, it has been agreed that it's ethically okay because this is the price of money. Money is it's this different view. In our society, money is perceived as another commodity, and the price of money is the interest rate. Fisher called it the interest rate the price of impatience. If you are patient, you will charge a higher interest rate. So in moments in times and periods which people become more impatient, the interest rate increases. Where people are more, patient, the interest rate decreases. So still, as I said, it's a kind of debate, if you like it. Philosophically, 500 years ago, most people will tell you this is an aberration. And that condition the society they live in. Okay? So we are going to use this interest rate, we are going to discount, which is the opposite operation. You compound the money, you take €1 to the future. If you want to take €1 from the future to the past, one period, if we multiply, right, we are multiplying that €1 by this factor, we discount doing this operation. So you get something which is smaller, strictly smaller than 1. And we call that operation discounting, and we call this factor the discounting factor. It's a number strictly smaller than 1 that multiplies an amount in the future and that makes this correction. Discounting is a mathematical correction. By discounting, given this RF rate, we are correcting the preference for present money against future money. And we are sort of making things comparable. We are sort of saying, all right, I cannot compare €5 to €6 in the future, but I can compare €5 to €6 divided by 1 plus 1 over risk-free rate. Because this is the financially equivalent amount today to those €6 in the future. And now we need to discuss a couple of things here. But this is a mathematical structure that allows us to incorporate how our preferences work into our decisions. Money in the future is processed mentally in our mind by being multiplied by a diminishing factor. 1,000 next year is less than 1,000 10 years ahead. And the later you give me that money, the less value that money will have. The less present value that money will have. Natalia, sorry.
So that discount rate is only because of the preferences of having present value, without taking into account inflation.
Forget about inflation. As I said, when we put inflation into the problem, then we have nominal and real. Mm-hmm. But this is more basic than that. This is more primitive. Okay. Forget about, as I said, don't forget, you want to do this example without money, let's say toys, candies, as a child. They will tell you, I prefer one candy today and one candy tomorrow.
But then that rate is subjective.
Now, that's the final point that I want to make here. We have personal preferences, because this is preferences, just the way each of us has a different risk preference, each of us has a different time preference. And people could be divided into patient and impatient people. People who are patient wouldn't mind to reduce current consumption in order to increase future consumption. They are lenders. People who are patient, they are lenders. I don't need, I have a kind of weak preference for consumption today. I don't mind to give up some of my consumption, my personal consumption, in order to increase. And that's the point. You need to give me more consumption in the future. But I don't mind. And then we have the impatient. Those people will value personal consumption a lot, and they will borrow against future consumption. These people do exactly the opposite operation. They will reduce future consumption in order to increase present consumption. and those are borrowers. The lenders make the interest rate to decrease. More lenders, more money in the system reduces the interest rate. And the borrowers are the demand of money. The more borrowers, the more people demanding money, that makes the interest rates to increase. So you have these opposite forces, and borrowers and lenders in the system will need to reach an equilibrium. So when we pull all together these guys, risk-free rate, a certain risk-free rate will emerge in equilibrium. In the time periods in which people are more willing to lend, the risk-free rate will be reduced. In the time periods in which more people are willing to borrow, the interest rates will increase. For all of them, and this is the interesting thing, and this is a kind of the irony, all of them are price takers. All of them know that in the system there is a common risk-free rate for all of them. All of them believe that the risk-free rate is given. What is the risk-free rate now, right now? 3%. I will make my decisions thinking the risk-free rate is 3%. But in reality, whenever we make an investment decision, all of us shape the risk-free rate. This is not an exogenous variable, it's an endogenous variable. But we perceive it as a exogenous variable. Do you know what I mean? We take the risk-free rate as given, common for all individuals, but in reality, this variable is determined by the equilibrium of all these different beliefs and needs, making a single market-wide risk-free rate. So both lenders and borrowers, both of them, impatient and impatient people, will make their operations at the same rate. So the existence of a financial market has many benefits. One of them, it gives us this reference. Right now, there is a risk-free rate, 3%, around 3% is paid. Now, knowing that, make the decisions. If you want to postpone consumption, you should demand at least 3%. No more, no less. Okay? And this is interesting because we don't perceive that. We will say something like, we will believe something like people who are more impatient, they will demand a higher return, right? Let's say that I'm more impatient, like Jesus, I said, right? 10% was enough for him. He wanted more than 10%. And let's say that I'm more patient, and 4% would be okay for me. Does it mean that I need to discount, I need to make my operations at a 4%, whereas someone who is impatient like Jesus, impatient in terms of the interest rates, like Jesus will have to use a 10%, and the answer is no. We will all go to the financial market, check what the risk-free rate is. So let's say, in my example here, for instance, 4%, and then accommodate our decisions to this level. So, in the neoclassical model, this is perfectly illustrated, we have present consumption. So this is one period because perfectly illustrated, the model simplifies everything. You have perfect present consumption and future consumption. And you are given what is called an endowment. You are given certain initial wealth. You have a certain amount of money that you can spend at time t, so let's call it ET, and certain amount of money that you can spend at time t plus 1. And this is your initial endowment. Income, salary, whatever you may call it. I have 20,000 right now, next year I have 30,000. So my consumption decision, my original consumption decision would be ET, this point here, right? ET plus 1, whatever these values for. You have less amount, you are not so lucky, you are over here, etc. Now the point is, people dislike variability in consumption a lot because we have these utility functions. And remember, utility is about smoothing. This concavity in utility function make us dislike a lot. If I have a lot of today and tomorrow I have very little, this is something that we strongly dislike. So we need to smooth consumption over time. And there is where the financial markets and the systems of a risk-free rate allow us to transfer money from present to the future or future to the present. If Jesus is going to the market and Jesus is giving his money, Jesus will say something like, I prefer taking more consumption today, borrowing against my future consumption. This is going to be your case, guys. You will not be able, most of you will not be able to buy an apartment right now with your income. You will have, like pretty much everybody, will have to get into a mortgage, borrowing against future income. Instead of bringing my future wages into the present through the mortgage. So I'm reducing my future consumption in order to achieve a greater consumption. We are reducing future consumption in order to increase present consumption. This is what someone who is impatient will do. If you take this line, what if I borrow everything that I have in the future to increase at maximum my present consumption? You get a point that is like that. What if I do the opposite thing? I do zero consumption today. I lend that money into the financial market in order to increase my future consumption. So you will have 0% consumption and greater future consumption. So that gives you a line of all the combinations possible. In macroeconomic and in micro as well, this is called the intertemporal consumption, the capital budget constraint, and defines the line in which the systems of the financial market and the risk-free rate in which borrowers and lenders can interplay, defines all the combinations of money that you can get. So what happens is that if someone has strong preferences for present consumptions, he will into the market and will find a point like this. I go into the market, borrow against my future consumption, I borrow against future consumption at the risk-free rate RF, whatever is in the market, and knowing that it's 3% or 4%, whatever, I make my consumption. If the interest rate is very high, I may not be able to borrow 500,000, I may just be able to borrow 200, that's my decision. And then someone who is very patient, the borrower, these guys do the opposite operation, reduces present consumption in order to increase future consumption. And that guy will have a sort of equilibrium, will find its personal optimum up there. The line is the same for everyone in the market. That's the point. With independence of your personal preferences, the equilibrium pulls the preferences of everyone into a single line. There is a kind of market collective job, and this is aggregated in a market-wide scale, and this is what the financial market does. All of us are different. We don't need homogeneous preferences. We may have different preferences, but they put together will shape the same line. The slope of that line is -1. The slope of this line that is negative is -1 plus the risk-free rate. And that risk-free rate will be determined in equilibrium. Now, impatient people goes down here, patient people goes up there. But they all accommodate their decisions to a single risk-free rate. So we can use, and that's the important takeaway here, the systems of financial market allow us to define a single discounting factor with independence of our preferences. And that with independence has an asterisk. You will perceive that thing as exogenous. When you say with independence, it's not real, in reality it's not true. You have collaborated with your own preferences to define that risk-free endogenously, but you don't know that. This is the Adam Smith invisible hand. In the market competition, a lot of things happen without you noticing. A lot of things make, the market work without you being conscious of that. One of them is You simply go and say, I need 200 euros to buy this apartment. I need to go to the bank and I'm going to ask for a loan and they're going to charge me 4%. And 200 is, affordable. That's making part of the whole thing, because when your small grain of sand is put together with many other decisions, the risk-free rate will be determined in equilibrium. That 4% is a result of people's decision, but they don't realize they are intergaming and interplay making that thing. So one risk-free rate for all of us, right? It's like the Lord of the Rings. One ring for all, independently or independently, with open quotation mark, closing quotation mark, independently of your preferences.
Those individuals have the same utility.
They don't have the same, that's my point. They don't need to have the same utility function. This guy has a preferences, a utility. They have a utility function in which you put present consumption and future consumption, and in the utility function of that guy, present consumption is overweighted in relation to future consumption.
Oh yeah, but they have the same level of utility.
Not necessarily. I don't care about the same level. For this guy, this guy maximizes his utility at this point. And this guy maximizes his personal utility at this point. And you don't care about my utility. You try to maximize your personal utility function. All of us maximizing our personal utility function make this line to be unique.
Yeah, it works like the budget constraint in a micro, but in a...
That's the budget constraint of micro.
Yeah.
It is the budget constraint of micro. So that gives us a single reference for all of us, the risk-free rate.
So what is the 1 over 1 plus risk-free here?
This is the minus,
No, that's the slope, but
that's the slope. 1 over, this is the discounted factor. You can see it because for most people, we tend to think naturally in the deposit, right? I put €1 today, at the end of the period I get 1 plus risk-free rate. But actually, most of the time what we do in finance is discounting, because we have things in the future and we want to bring it right now. So this is the most common operation in finance. People who are not familiar with finance think in this operation because of the banking system. They know that if they put 1,000 in the deposit, they get 1,000 plus something. But most of the time in finance, we do the opposite operation. Bring things in the future to the present. Okay guys, is understood? One risk-free rate independently of your preferences. That's very powerful. And that's what the financial market does. And it does in this type of equilibrium. And then we have something that we're going to use evaluation.
So when you put there 1 over 1 referred less than 1, what were you referring to there?
Because this factor, this discounting factor, typically involves a risk-free rate positive. So 1 over 1 plus RF is extremely smaller than 1. You want to do, the question is, €1 in the future is equivalent to how much in the present? You will always say something like a less than 1. I don't know how much. It will depend on that risk-free rate, right? It will be 90 cents or 70 cents, depending on the amount, how much you are charging for the discount. Okay, how much you are putting in the discounting factor. So the final step that I want to put here is this operation. So let's say that I'm well aware that all banks, let's put it this way. Bank A gives you this deal, gives you this offer. You put €1 and at the end of the year you get 1 plus risk-free A. And Bank B, exactly the same thing like Bank A. It's not like a they is operating in a different country, different conditions, just sort of the same bank, same different brand, gives you a different deal. You put €1 today, and it will give you 1 plus risk-free rate B in the future. Risk-free rate A and risk-free B need to be how much?
The same, but
Will it be the same?
yeah,
It
because
depends.
it's exogenous.
2 banks, Bank A, Bank B.
It depends.
A give you 5%, B can give you 6%.
No, because we just said the mixed rebate is achieved by every participant of the financial
Why?
market. agreed
That's what it
to have
says.
the same
But now I'm saying, forget about NICE. That's what theory, very theory. Now I'm bringing a different question.
Because then you would have to justify why bank B is paying you a 1%
Why do you need to
premium.
justify why B is paying us a premium?
You can do it.
Because of risk, because a small bank, like, for example,
But
that's
why
not
do you need to
the risk.
justify, why do you simply say 6% if they are offering 5%?
because if I invest in Banco Santander, is not investing the same as in Banco, I don't know, Banco Pichincha.
So Banco Pichincha, Banco Santander. Why not Banco Pichincha can give you 6%? Because you perceive that Pichincha is very poor in relation to Santander, right? But what about a mirror bank of Santander?
They can do it to attract more clients or to.
They have the same
whatever.
safe
This,
asset.
can this coexist? Is the same asset in the same conditions can have different prices?
Shouldn't happen because
It's
it's
no risk.
arbitrage.
I'm talking about this is price of money. So I'm thinking of money, but I may need to take your challenge and talk about any other asset, any other product. But right now I'm talking about the price of money. For your in exchange of your euro today, one gives you your euro plus 5%, the other gives you 1 plus 6%. Is that possible? That's my question. Is that possible?
It's not
Exactly
sustainable.
this, but mirror banks.
No.
I don't think so. Because if this exists in one economy, people will borrow at 5% and invest in 6%, so
It's arbitrary.
That was what you were guys see. There is one thing, there is one powerful thing, one powerful principle that we exploit in economics and finance, which is called the law of one price. The law, if you like. Law of one price. That is very simple. Two identical things must have the same price. Otherwise, what?
They're different.
You have
Yeah,
argued.
exactly, right?
You have arbitrage.
Oh.
What the loop is forbidden is arbitrage. So what is arbitrage? Otherwise, arbitrage. What is arbitrage?
Efficiencies.
No.
You find a gap.
Inefficiency triggers arbitrage opportunities.
It's exploiting those
You're exploiting you are exploiting misvaluation.
Exactly.
These two things should have the same value. Okay, they don't have the same value, then you have an arbitrage opportunity. So what is arbitrage?
So when in one market, when in two markets, an identical asset is priced differently.
So you
that's
can
it.
exploit
You
this.
basically buy.
You can
basically
profit out of it.
buy the item in the cheaper market and
You
sell
buy
it more
cheap.
expensive.
You buy cheap
And sell the same thing.
and sell expensive. So
At-
arbitrage, you, so to speak, buy is about buying the cheap thing, and then at the same time you sell. At the same time you sell the expensive thing, because you are with this strategy you are trying to profit from the misvaluation. You get a margin. Cheap, expensive minus cheap gives you a margin. That triggers a benefit for you. So this is the difference between investment and arbitrage. What is the difference between investment?
The time frame.
No. Here we're talking about one period.
Arbitrage
One
is
period.
out of
What is what is the difference between investment and arbitrage?
Arbitrage searches from inefficiency and investment, it's because it works.
No, I can invest in both efficient and inefficient markets. So what is risk? What characterizes the investment? Risky profits and capital expenditure. In investment, you will make a capital expenditure. So let's say that this is cash flow at time zero. Typically, you will observe a capital expenditure, and then you get a positive amount of money, risky. Maybe I get that amount. Typically, with investment, is something that compensates my capital expenditure, but it will not be 100% sure that is the case. So what is the difference with this other operation? What is the difference between arbitrage and investment? Arbitrage, first of all, involves zero investment. There is zero net investment. You don't have to put money out of your pocket. This is a self-finance strategy. You will not face any negative outflow. And in exchange of nothing, you will get something positive, like an investment, 100% granted. This is the dream of any investor. And whereas this is possible, no one will stop. This triggers the free lunch opportunity. This is, remember the picture I put the other day? This is the free idea. This is connected with our first positive derivative of the utility function. The idea that give me more money, it makes me always happier and happier, will make me exploit this opportunity with no bounds. Nothing.
I don't understand how arbitrage is buying cheap and selling expensive.
Because that's the way you are going to construct this wonderful thing that is the golden dream of any investor.
But how?
I will not spend nothing, I will spend nothing, and in exchange I will materialize certain amount of money.
But how is that like zero net investment if you're buying?
That's part of the trick. And because here is the critical point, because it means no investment on my side, I will do this without no stop. Whereas, as long as this opportunity is in the market, I will profit it like no tomorrow.
So we assume there's no risk.
No, the way I'm going to construct what is called the arbitrage portfolio,
Means that there is no risk.
the way I'm going to construct my arbitrage portfolio removes is self-funded, 100% chance of getting money at some moment in time. But this is the characteristic of arbitrage, so this is not an investment. An investment is like this. I can make money or not, typically investing something. If you tell me that I don't need to invest money in my pocket, out of my pocket, and I get 100% benefits, this is something superior. Everyone will say, I want that. And not just €1, I give you anything that we need. That thing is going to put pressure on the market because this is sort of disequilibrium. As long as the arbitrage opportunity exists, people will making this arbitrage, will forming those portfolios, putting pressure on the thing that you are buying, putting pressure on the thing that you are selling, but making prices move up and down in order to correct imbalance. So how can we profit from this situation? The portfolio strategy is buy cheap, sell expensive. So my portfolio, I'm gonna go at time 0 and at time T1 if you like. What I'm gonna do is borrow cheap. I'm gonna go to the bank that has the lowest interest rate. So remember in my example, A was 5%, B was 6%. I'm gonna go and borrow money from the cheapest bank. Go to the bank that has the 5% interest rate. And I borrow 1 unit. I borrow, so I get the money. I'm gonna emphasize the operation with the signs. Plus means I'm taking the money, minus means, plus means inflow, minus means outflow. So I borrow from the bank that has the interest rate, the cheap interest rate, 5%. And I use this euro, which is not mine, remember, it's Bank A who is giving me the money. I use this euro to lend an expensive bank. I borrow from one bank, and then I go to the other bank and say, I want to deposit in your office. Take this euro, that makes a net position, which is the sum of the two things. So 0. I'm not paying anything here. It's a self-finance strategy. You see that, right? I borrow from one, and I lend to the other. And what happens then, in the next period, the bank that I borrow, I have to pay with interest. I borrow €1 to bank A, right? So this is 1 from bank A, this is -1 to bank B. The bank that I got my euro at A, I need to repay. So I pay the euro plus the risk-free rate of bank A. They charge me the 5%. But because I invested in bank B, then I get the payoff from bank B. I get my euro back plus the risk-free rate from B. So the net position is risk-free B minus risk-free A. If risk-free B is greater than risk-free A, I'm making the arbitrage. As long as the two interest rates are different, I'm profiting from this margin. The bigger the margin, the bigger my profit. The more money, the leverage I put on this operation, this is for €1. See, rather than €1 I go for 1 million, I profit that margin over 1 million. While we are doing that, this is putting a lot of pressure on both markets. Bank A is having a lot of people borrowing. They are asking a lot of money from you. A lot of people go to the office and ask for more and more money. And at the same time, this bank is receiving a lot of money. So sooner or later, they both will question the levels. These people is asking too much. We don't have that money at the 6%, at the 5%. Let's give it 5.5. Still, a lot of people are still coming. Let's charge it 5.5. And the others will think the opposite way. A lot of people is coming here. A lot of people sort of are willing to work with us. What if rather than paying 6%, we pay just 5.75%? They still will be happy. So why not charge? Why not paying 5.75%? Sooner or later, the difference will disappear. Sooner or later, at some point between 5 and 6%, this thing, the loop, the law of one price will be satisfied. And then market can stay at equilibrium. Whereas this condition is not fulfilled, there cannot be equilibrium in the market. This is a powerful tool, this is a super powerful principle that we use to value things. It's a kind of analogy. If something pays 5% and I offer the same thing, I need to have a 5% reward. So if in the market the operations are rewarded with RF, whatever RF is, by the law of one price, we need to stick to that 5%. In other words, you may say, I have this flat in Pamplona. I want to sell it for 4 million euros. Yeah, but there is no market for that. A 100 meters here in Pamplona would be, 400,000, not 4 million euros. If you go for 4 million euros, there is no market for you. You will have to go to the whatever is paid right now in Pamplona for a 100 meters square. Is understood, guys? So all this said, in order to justify why we can, in certain conditions, we can work with a risk-free rate as a discounted factor, and then say that the present value of something that pays in the future, this amount of, if it does with no risk, then the rate of return that we need to require is the same that is required in the market for risk-free operations. And the law of one price tells us there should be just one risk-free rate for all of you. Otherwise, there will be disequilibrium, there will be arbitrage. Okay? I'm going to use the arbitrage later again. This idea needs to be clear, guys. I will be using it in a more complicated context when we talk about the risk neutral valuation. This is the principle that we explore. The basic principle in finance is market cannot be in equilibrium if there are arbitrage opportunities. Okay? Questions? It's understood, because then we can jump. The risk-free rate is super simple, the operation. We will discount with one risk-free rate, but of course there are many questions here. If this is a compensation for people having different preferences, why not everyone has its own personal discounted factor for the reasons that we have explained? There will be just one risk-free rate, and we all are happy under this condition. I would say if I even look at the arbiter's opportunity, whether I'm completely risk averse or I am super aggressive individual, they all will love this opportunity. This has nothing to do, this is a sort of risk-free opportunity. It's free lunch. Everyone will love to exploit this opportunity. So using this principle of analogy, if you like, we will claim that that's the right price for something that pays in the future. Let's go for a break, but the question would be, okay, that's gonna be in this question. But what happens when xt plus 1 is not certain, but random? We have already discussed that randomness changes everything. So let's finish today's class with this super important idea in this course. How from here, which will be the simplest case, having a common valuation independently of your preferences, how can we move into the more global and realistic context in which we perceive the future as uncertain? Let's go for 15 minutes break, guys, and we solve this question.